appoint Greg and Richard right here on Dark and Red.
It's all change at Nottingham Forest, and Ange Postecoglou hasn't shirked the immediate challenge of facing a trip to Arsenal for his first game in charge. I mean, he could have said, I'll take the job, but appoint me on Sunday, mate. Nah, he's backed himself like he always seems to and has taken the reins with immediate effect. So it will be his team selection at the Emirates. It will be Big Ange in the dugout, and all of us must now jump on board, or indeed jump on the surfboard, ready to ride this wave and see if the big Aussie can buck his own trend and bring silverware to Trentside in his first season. I'm your host, Greg Oram. He's the Oklahoma kid, Richard Spray. And on the panel, we have Raf, the random pundit, and the Statman Danscape. Strap yourselves in, as the big Ange era is now underway.
Ange Postecoglou is officially the new head coach of Nottingham Forest.
Is Ange a cast-off from elsewhere?
He's cast off from Spurs, isn't he? Whether he's going to have learnt lessons from Tottenham and subsequently deploy them differently in Nottingham Forest, he'll have the same challenges. Marinakis is no easy person to put.
Ange Postecoglou, blood. Ange and Marinakis are about to have a big fat Greek wedding at Nottingham Forest, blood. Marinoglu, fam. I will never forget.
It's just who we are, mate. 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 That's one of the most sort of backhanded, sort of underwhelming compliments I've ever had.
So Big Ange is the new Forest manager. I'm looking forward to watching Milenkovic playing that high line like he's towing a caravan. Is Ange the one, Forest fans?
It's that big high line that everyone's talking about, and Milenkovic's name is getting dragged into it. Big red card for the big red Serb last night, getting hauled off against England. We won't be going into that match. We are here to preview Arsenal. Richard Spray over in Oklahoma, the Oklahoma kid. How you doing, mate?
Doing good. Yeah, new era on the pitch, new interview era off the pitch. So we're looking forward to it. The old line from Jurassic Park, right? Hold on to your butts.
Indeed. And Raf, you weren't with us yesterday, but you are. So we'll get some Ange reaction from you shortly. But just quickly, good morning, good afternoon. You okay?
Yeah, very good. Very good. It is a superb morning because it's not really about me. It's all about Dan, and a good happy birthday to Dan.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Raf. It is Danscape's birthday. Happy birthday to you, buddy.
Happy birthday. So listen, happy birthday. It's your birthday again. Get happy over birthday. It. So listen here, kid. It's your birthday again. It's your birthday again. Get over it. Whoopee.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Danscape. Happy birthday, mate.
Thank you very much. The big 4-2, if that's the thing. 42 years old. Who'd have thought?
42 years young, mate. Young. Yeah.
What I wouldn't give to be 42 years old again. But hey, those days are in the past. Wow. Okay, right. We are going to get up and running very shortly. We are doing the Arsenal preview. It is big news, isn't it, in the last 24 hours with Nuno out the door. Ange Postecoglou is in at Forest, and it's his first game in charge. And like I said in the intro, he hasn't shirked the challenge. He hasn't said to Marinakis, I'm your man, but not till Sunday. He has backed himself to go into Arsenal, come hell or high water, whatever happens. And I got to respect that. I think that is a really good sign and a good way to get started. If you're with us in the comments, please let us know you are here. We'll try and give you the shout outs as usual. We want to know your thoughts on Arsenal ahead. And of course, if you've got any thoughts on Big Ange as the new Forest manager. We hope that you will hit like and subscribe and join us here at Talking Reds. Push us over the approaching 2,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. Bit of a mess at the moment with the podcasting on Apple and Spotify. So that's still in the throes of getting sorted. I promise. One more thing I want to add before we get into it. I promised Eve Tomlinson that I would give her a shout out. Eve is a face and a name that many of you will know from X and Twitter. She's a big Forest fan, and she is running a marathon or a race or a 10K, I think it is. I beg your pardon. And she's going to be doing it for two charities. She is running a 10K race for D-Fibs for grassroots football, and also for the Footprints Conductive Education Centre. So there's two charities there that are going to benefit from Eve, getting out of her comfort zone and running a 10K race. We're going to put the links into the bio, and Richard will put them into the chat as well. So please do go ahead. And if it's a $5, a $10, couple of quid, whatever you can, they're two great charities. Let's support Eve in her 10K race for those two charities and try and get her up towards her target. I know times are tough and not everyone can put their hand in the pocket. So, if you can offer support by maybe sharing her race on X, that would be a great way to support her. But yeah, sure enough, we want to try and raise some money for these charities. So please do, if you can, give what you can. All right. Okay. Raf, I'm going to come to you first, because you weren't with us yesterday when we were doing our Nuno out and Ange in. And I want to give you a chance to give us your thoughts on Postecoglou at Forest.
Yeah, apologies all for not being able to be on yesterday. Life got in the way. But yeah, I'm a kind of 50-50, and I'll go with the positive side of things, which is I do think that now that we're hearing more about what Nuno's vision was for what he wanted out of the squad, I just don't think those ambitions match what Marinakis had in mind at all. And Marinakis wants to skip another 2 years of progression, 2 to 3 years in 1 year. And that wasn't really what Nuno wanted. I don't think that there was the belief that Nuno wants or has the skill set to manage a really large squad where everyone is the same ability. Ergo, a change is needed. And it's not a great sign when your own coaches that you brought in think you've gone a bit too far with what you said publicly. So I think that there's a change. So we then get to a bit of a situation of what do we do? Like, what do we do and who comes in? And it's really funny, very, very quickly, it just came to mind straight away. There's a film based on complete true story about Charlie Wilson, a Republican. And it's to do with the 80s of when the Americans armed the Afghans to effectively beat the Russians on behalf of the Americans, who then chipped in as well. And they kind of win. The Afghans are all armed and they drive them all out, the Russians out of Afghanistan. It's absolutely brilliant. And right at the end of the film, there's an amazing saying that's right at the end that draws a lot of parallels to where Forest are, right? They were glorious and they changed the world. And then we effed up the end game, right? So we get to the point where we've survived. We've cemented ourselves in the Premier League. We've got Europe. Everything is trending in the right way, right? This appointment has to be totally right. Otherwise, we take a number of steps back. And again, we F up the end game of becoming a top 8 set piece and getting Europe. So have we done the right thing? I think that genuinely, I'm pretty hopeful. I think this is a 1-year appointment. Ange knows how to win the Europa League. That is what Marinakis wants. He wins the Europa League. Unless he smashes the league at the same time, he's out. And then we get a top draw coach in afterwards. But strap in. We've got a whole lot of attackers that have been brought in that are really exciting. And who knows how to make attacking exciting? It's Ange. So I think it's going to be a really good watch.
Well, yeah, I mean, he certainly is a media magnet. They seem to be drawn to him because they know they can get a soundbite and they know they can get a reaction. And I just hope that he is able to approach this job in a much calmer way and not be so abrasive and not be so confrontational, because he turned a lot of people off, fans and media. and I listen to Talk Sport all the time. I'm not saying I'm a big fan of Alex Crook because it can sometimes be a bit of a weapon if you ask me, but he has made it pretty clear that he actually dislikes Postecoglou quite a bit based on the fact of how Ange has interacted with him and other journalists in the past. Now, as I said yesterday, journalists are tough cookies. They're not there to make any friends, and they can rub people up the wrong way just as much. But I do think as well, there's a way that you conduct yourself as a manager, and as the Forest manager, I'm looking forward to Thursday. His press conference is going to be box office for us Forest fans, because we're used to Nuno prior to his meltdown saying nothing in press conferences. So hopefully we'll see Ange portraying and representing the Forest badge in the right way. We're going to have to wait and see, because I've got these images and these sound bites in my head that eventually we're going to have Ange Postecoglou raging down the in front of the media cameras. It could end up something like this.
Don't say that, because that irritates me, and I punch blokes in the mouth for saying that. Don't you dare say that.
I hope it doesn't happen, Richard. I hope he's a calm cookie now he's at Forest.
Yeah, I was watching some of the interviews back. I think it is easy to kind of focus in on one segment of time, right? And then when you look at the landscape of how he's been, because to Dan's point, like I was watching some interviews where he came on, and I think there was the one where the guy came to put a microphone on him. He's like, "Hey, introduce yourself first, mate," like that kind of thing, just because it was a little bit handsy. So he's got a good sense of humor. I mean, he seems like he's got a bit more camera savvy. Not that Nuno's like, this just blank slate, doesn't react to anything kind of situation, but it certainly wasn't his favorite aspect of the job. And I think Ange is going to handle it differently. But there's plenty of video out there of him being very affable and humorous and all of that, like the good bloke scenario that Dan kind of referenced, the down to earth guy. So yeah, I have a hope that that will be what the norm versus the exception.
When Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher were like a bunch of goofy teenagers when they were around here, and they couldn't get enough of him, because he's good fun. He's good for them and for Sky and for saying things that get a reaction. Brucey, good morning to you. Good afternoon. How you doing? Good to have you with us. James Cunningham is with us. He's saying hello to us all, and of course to Danscape, whose birthday it is. Indeed. So for his birthday, Danscape wished for Cooper back. I'm not quite sure that is true. Maybe not. Matt Wooten says, morning all. After meeting Dan versus Brentford at halftime, how times change so quick. And happy birthday, Dan, from your two biggest fans, Moggy Boy. I think that's your mum and dad. Am I right about that?
Could be anyone, couldn't it? That two biggest fans. Who knows? But yeah, I think
you've got fans. You've got big fans there. Well done. James Cunningham says, really interesting to listen to that interview the Celtic guy Matt did on Forest Focus. We haven't seen that, but yep, I encourage you as always to go and check them out as well. And as I said, Richard has put the links into the chat for Eve's fundraiser. There's one of them there as well. Okay, right. Danscape. We are going to get into Arsenal very soon, but obviously we still have to kind of consider the big thing is Ange Postecoglou's appointment. You've had 24 hours or so since we were podding and thinking, and I know you didn't get much sleep the night before. It's now your birthday, so you've probably got big plans ahead. But has it settled in yet with you, and where are you at now?
I think the bit that stuck with me was the point you said about how much respect you had for him for taking this game on, and I think it is a sign of what's to come, because it is that kind of bold, sort of stubborn chaos potentially, because whatever happens in this game could have a massive sort of bearing on how we view him, really. So it's a high risk, high reward kind of situation. He could have waited till after this game, and then he would have had a period of games where you could sort of judge him a little bit more fairly, but he's going for it to go away to the Emirates and face Arsenal. Obviously, he knows Arsenal well. It's not like a surprise to him. It's not like a manager coming in from another league and not researched these teams before. So he'll be familiar with them. But I think it's a sign of what's to come, is the fact that, he's going to take this one head on and do it his way. Whether in terms of style of football and all of that, I just don't know. I really think we've just got to suck it and say, I think he will want to get his style into this team. But whether he can do that quickly and whether he tries to do that quickly, that's up to him as a manager, and none of us can possibly tell or guess really what he's going to do. That's where he's going to either earn his money or struggle, is if he does become too stubborn, and that's what management is, isn't it? You've got to adapt. So he's either got to adapt to get results, or he's got to think long term, this is how we play, so we just start from day one and we try it from day one. So it just all you know is I think it's going to be entertaining. That's what we've said. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be exciting. Whether it's press conferences, whether it's football, something's going to be notable every week, I think, with this team and with him as manager.
I mean, there's lots to get into, which I'm going to pick up with you about adaptability and whether he will adapt and whether he'll stick to his guns and be quite strict from the very off. And that's something we're going to definitely be talking about through this episode. I just want to go back to the comments. James is asking, do you think the press room is big enough? It is quite small at Forest, and I think there'll be lots more in there now. Scott says, happy birthday to you, Danscape. Scotty over from Australia. I will quickly add it in while he's there. The Nottingham Forest Australia Supporters Club are having an Arsenal meetup. So this Saturday, so it's the 13th of September, my wife's birthday, at 9:30 in the evening kickoff for you guys over in Australia. So there's meetups in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, Newcastle. Please go and check the Nottingham Forest Australia Supporters Facebook page for meetup details. Scott, a big organizer of things over there, making sure that all you Forest fans down under can get games together. And now you've got an Aussie in charge, and maybe it brings it a bit closer to home for you guys. And hopefully you enjoyed that as well. And Ulrika Johnson, I mean, I wish it was the real Ulrika Johnson. She says she's in the chat. I had a big crush on Ulrika growing up. She says, I'm a Spurs fan. To say that I'm expecting Ange to be a disaster for you. Weird thing. I hope I'm not wrong. Well, if only you were the real Ulrika Johnson, my life would be complete. But I have to say thank you, Ulrika, because you've just given us $2.99. Amazing. Thank you, Ulrika. We salute you. That's a wonderful thing to do. Really appreciated. Okay. Alrighty. How do we preview this game? I mean, we've got nothing to go on in terms of anything to do with Ange, to do with Forest. We can only base our judgment on what he did at Spurs and how he played at Spurs. Dan's just touched on, his style of football and everything else, and how he likes that high line. But we know that our defense was one of the best defenses at sitting deep and being compact. And if they're all fit, they're all going to be selected. Nico, Ola, Murillo, Milenkovic, all the rest of it. If they're all fit, then you expect them to play. So there's a way of doing things. So I guess what we'll do is we'll start off with Dan and Raf coming together to give us the kind of the Statman opposition preview all mixed into one. So we'll start with this.
I'm a Statman. Fazendo som, Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som, e Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som.
Had multiple calls from Sergio from hospital in the last 24 hours, rubbing me up about Ange. And of course, with Arsenal on Saturday, Serge the Gooner, he says it's going to be 3-1 to Arsenal, of course. That's his score prediction he wanted to get in. So I thought I'll add that in around his favourite music. And over to Dan, and Raf's going to be coming in on this as well.
Okay, yeah. So I thought we'd look at Arsenal, set the scene as to what kind of form they're in and how they're performing of late. And I suppose, as ever, they're a difficult team to beat. I think we know that about Arsenal. They're pretty steady. They don't tend to go on like long runs of bad form, and even when they're bad, they tend to draw. And you can see, obviously, across time, their form chart at the top there is pretty steady, but they've not really hit the heights of being like a title challenge in title form for a little while. They've struggled to get that consistent over the course of the last sort of 20-odd games. But I mean, one thing I picked up in particular is over the last like 24 games that are in this range, they've never lost more than one game in a row. So obviously last time out, they lost to Liverpool. So we'd have to be causing them a bit more of trouble than they've had recently to be able to get a win against them, especially with everything going off. So it's going to be a tough challenge. But their performance chart as well at the bottom is trending slightly downwards. This is my attempt to, put a performance score to each game that they've played compared to their other games, and you can just see it's not going upwards. They are struggling, and I think where we'll come on to on the second slide is where that is, and it's very much in the attacking sense. They aren't a particularly creative team at the minute. So far this season, their attack, if you look at the top right on this particular chart, it kind of ranks like 55% across all Premier League teams since 2017. So it is a bang average attack in terms of the XG they're creating, if you like. But where they're strong is that their defence is one of the top 4% of defences that you've seen in the Premier League, albeit this is only over 3 games. So there's obviously a caveat depending on who they've played and whatnot. But this is where their sort of issues probably lie. And if you look at the players chart on the right in terms of where the goals and assists come from, 6 goals and assists from defence versus 1 from midfield so far this season. So again, they are set up so that things are built in a probably, whatever you call it, steady way from the back, as opposed to being a completely fluid sort of attacking team. So quite different to what we're probably expecting from Forest now. On the left-hand side is there kind of some ratings for specific skills and things as a team. Goalkeeping, currently, based on the 3 games so far, one of the best goalkeeping performances in the Premier League. And set pieces, we know they're strong at, performing at like 77% rating on that. But creativity, again, down at 35%. That's almost a bottom 6 side score for creativity at the moment. But their finishing is up at 86%. So I suppose it's just trying to give a picture of what kind of team they are at the minute. And so far this season, they've not been this super creative, fluid side, even though they've added some players that Raf will come on to in a minute. The 2 players that stand out in that chart on the right are 2 of their new signings that are performing at a high level for their role. Zubimendi is a top 5% sort of destroyer so far. And Gyökeres is a top 10% poacher, taking his chances in the box or whatnot. So that's where they are. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts on that before moving over to Raf's bit.
Richard, anything?
Yeah, I was just looking at there's just a goals against scenario, and it's pretty bleak. I mean, you've kind of highlighted it there. I think it's 0 goals anywhere except for 1, which is a set piece scenario. Which, I mean, hey, that may be an advantage to us in some capacity with Milenkovic and so forth. And it'll be interesting to see how easily we can break them down, because it seems like in the midfield, I mean, you're saying Zubimendi's a destroyer. I guess I'd have to ask you again to kind of clarify what that means in terms of, is that sort of a disruptor, destroyer? It's like it's difficult to work through them in the middle. You're not going to see a lot of opportunity in open play. I mean, I'm kind of questioning what that, forgive me, Dan, I should know at this point what the destroyer exactly means. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it is what we see as a number 6. It's a guy whose job is literally win the ball and give it to someone else to build.
Yeah.
So win the ball back, intercept the ball. Yeah. So that's what at the minute he's doing very, very well for them.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. I think everyone should just kind of remember that when we get onto a little part of about Zubimendi, him be the destroyer, and we'll have a look at how he moves around the pitch in a little bit. But what I also want as a bit of a kind of interaction of what we're going to see next is have a look at how Saliba is the one, like he's the stopper, he's the possession control, he's the rock that's there. And weirdly, you've got Gabriel, who's kind of box to box top role marauderer, and his top roll's only at 52%. So out of that defensive partnership, it's Saliba that's the one that's probably been actually the exceptional one that's kept everything together so far.
He's out as well.
We're coming on to that, Greg. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, so to that end, and then you have a look at where the threat's coming from here. If you look at like exactly what Dan said, you've got 3 goals and 3 assists coming from effectively their fullbacks / wingbacks, right? Again, so that is something that really we need to be cognizant on, especially, Greg, when we come to building what team we think should play, and actually maybe how our hand is going to be forced might help us out with that, with that degree.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Right. So we've got more coming up. Okay, off we go, Raf.
Yeah, so very quickly here, and we looked at that creativity, and remember they are like bottom 6 in creativity up until now, There might be a reason for that because Odegaard hasn't been fit, but he is now fit to come back into the side. So I'm expecting that creativity number to go up quite heavily. So he's naturally coming in to strengthen what is, I would say, their best 11, which is what you can see here. As Greg has alluded to, Saliba is not, well, he may be fit. He's got a 75% chance of playing, basically. So he's probably going to be fit, but not. But would he be fully match fit and back on it? We don't really know. But the big miss from their lineup is definitely Saka, right? He's the one that's missing. But Madueke's come in, and anyone watching the England game yesterday, he's not a slouch, right, at all. So we're going to come, Danscape, we might come onto this in a little bit, but also Madueke is not exactly much of a downgrade on Saka, but Saka is absolutely brilliant. What we're going to come back to this in a second and talk injuries and depth, but what is of note, if you have a look at a lot of what Dan's been talking about, is that trend over the last seasons and where they've got to in these first 3 games with players bedding in. They've done a lot of transition in their squad. They've had Jorginho out, Partey out, Tomiyasu out, Tierney, and then some others as well. But what they've brought in, Zubimendi, he's gone straight into the starting lineup. Gyökeres, he's gone straight into the starting lineup. Madueke, who's being used right now because Saka's injured. And Eze's pretty much first off the bench if he's not starting, which he started in games. So you've got 4 players that are immediately having an impact. And when you look at that level of creativity that's there with those types of players like your Eze's and your Maduekes, they're upping the ante slightly of what's going on.
So do you envision Eze being on the left then in place of Martinelli and playing more as a starting option?
I think I like Martinelli. I think he brings something and I think he's massively underrated. I would see Martinelli potentially being started. There's the thing that Eze didn't really play like over the last 2 weeks or anything else as well. But either which way, you've got Martinelli, you've got Eze, they're still massively problematic, one and other. They're both highly mobile and they can cause huge issues. So for me, they are potentially getting back to full strength other than Saka. But Saliba, if he does not play, is a massive miss for them because coming in you can see we've got basically Mosquera who's come in. He is one of their under 21 players, but they've also got this Hincapié. I've missed an I out of at the end. He's come in. He's about 23. So it's one of the 2 of them that will sub in for Saliba, but that is a new person that is coming in that's not used to this Arsenal back 4 that's going to have to come in. So that's really significant if Saliba does not start. Really significant. Cool. I think we can then... Yeah,
for Brazil as well last night in Bolivia. So it might be that he's rested because of the journey time. We don't know. Potentially on the Martinelli.
we don't know. We don't know. So like back to Dan to now look at actually how this all kind of bakes out.
It was just to look at the new signings and where they fit in. Looking at the midfield first. So I suppose we've got Zubimendi down at the bottom right here. So this chart is looking at the ball winning across left to right and the final third involvement up the top. So you can tell what type of midfielder you're looking at. So bottom right, Zubimendi, absolutely no involvement in the final third so far, literally down at like 1%. But again, his ball winning skills are right up there with what was Thomas Partey for them last season, doing that kind of job. Top left, obviously, is where you've got your creative players. So Odegaard, Gibbs-White, right up there. Gibbs-White for this season and last season is up there in terms of the final third involvement. Eze, you can see, is lurking in that area from last season, so he'll be wanting to sort of move into that position. But one thing I noticed is just Declan Rice this season so far hasn't actually had much impact. He's dropped off massively in terms of what he used to have as a final third impact. Again, it's 3 games, so I'm talking as if it means a great deal, but I suppose this is all we've got to go on. So he's dropped so massively right into that bottom left corner where you don't want to be. And then in the top right, of course, is the Elliot Anderson love fest. So that is your all-round midfielder, right? If you go in the top right corner of this chart, you are an all-round midfielder that can do a bit of everything. And Elliot Anderson's up there for both last season and this season. Nico Dominguez isn't far off. Mikel Merino is their kind of version of Elliot Anderson, if you like, who's not done too bad for them, I don't think.
Hat-trick the other night.
Yeah, he's one of those underrated players because he's not super sexy exciting, is he? But he does actually have quite a big impact for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, his stats were definitely pushed up because that's his 24-25 stats, and he was up top quite a lot playing the 9 last season. So his final third involvements naturally get a boost because he's touching the ball as a forward a lot more. So I think he gets favoured a bit with his last year stats from that.
Okay.
And then in the forward line, I suppose just looking at the Gyökeres Madueke impact for them and where they sit. Obviously, this is finishing going to the right and the chance creation going to the top. So again, if you're in the top right, you're doing a bit of both. So for us last season, Elanga was in that kind of zone. Dan Ndoye's not too far away. He's got the finishing side of his game. Just needs to bump up the chance creation to get into that top right hand corner. But you can see Gyökeres is very much a finisher, not a chance creator so far at Arsenal. He's down there with Chris Wood. He's very much in the Chris Wood mould in terms of what role he's offered so far at Arsenal. Madueke is a little bit drifting. Look, you can see there's 2 seasons worth of his data there, and he's not massive on the chance creation, but he's also obviously not the most prolific finisher. So I think you could still say he's a bit of a project of a player compared to, say, Saka, who last season for chance creation at the top of that chart is literally, one of the best there's ever been in terms of his ability to create chances whenever he's on the pitch. If he could improve his finishing a little bit, even though he is a very good finisher, then he would jump right into that top right hand corner where you want to be. So I was just a look at those guys, and I think with Gyökeres, it's what we expect. I know you're a fan of him, Greg.
Gyökeres, yeah, I am. I just think give the guy time. He is the kind of player that Arsenal were crying out for. And he's coming. I mean, I know he's scored a couple of goals. I missed the performances because I was away from him. But I think give him time, give Gyökeres time, and I think he will come good for them. And he potentially could be the difference that they're after. It's a big season, I think, for Mikel Arteta because he's got to deliver something for Arsenal. And I don't mean a Carabao Cup or an FA Cup. They're crying out for the league or for the Champions League, and I'm not sure that it's in them still. We might be in them, but Liverpool, it might be in them more with where they're performing. But yeah, on Gyökeres, I think he's a good signing, and I think he'll come good for them.
Yeah, I was going to say with Dan Ndoye too. I hope that when players, Raf referenced Madueke in terms of, it's not good for us if he's coming in with an immense amount of confidence off of the international break and playing for England. But I would say that for Dan Ndoye, similarly, it would be good for him to kind of fill that Elanga assist role. If he's not going to score a bunch of goals, at least be servicing the ball into Wood and so forth and providing that option, because he's certainly doing that for Switzerland. Again, different team, potentially different setup, different coaching, things of that nature. But yeah, I hope he carries that confidence in because we're going to need that. He certainly had that beautiful assist to Callum Hudson-Odoi, didn't he? So hopefully that's coming. Hopefully that's on the horizon for that chance creation.
Well, that sort of comes into this final slide on forward. So this is the playmaking going left to right. So that's through balls, crosses, switching the ball, and the box crashing bottom to left is how often you're getting on the end of things in the box. So again, you want to be top right if you can, because you can do a bit of both. So you can see Chris Wood being top left is very much not involved in the playmaking side of it. Neither is Gyökeres so far at Arsenal. But you can see Dan Ndoye's kind of in the middle there, and he's different to Hudson-Odoi. So Hudson-Odoi last season was very much playmaking, but not box crashing, as we know. We talked about it a bit. But Dan Ndoye is, starting to push into that top right-hand corner because he is involved in the play and he can offer the box crashing side of it. So hopefully that's what he can kind of bring. Again, with Elanga, you can see he's not really someone that used to get on the end of things in the box as much as he did kind of, get involved in play further back. In terms of Arsenal's players, Odegaard is obviously the guy who stands out in terms of doing both of these for them compared to Gibbs-White for us. And I suppose, again, Madueke and Eze are just on the outskirts of that kind of area of being in the prime of both. But Eze provides the box crashing more than the playmaking for me. And you can just about see that on that chart. He's not someone who's necessarily getting involved in the kind of tippy-tappy build-up bit. He's the guy you give the ball in and around the box and he smashes a shot in.
So does this give you an indication? I know we're going to get onto it. Maybe Raf, you're going to jump in and say this. So sorry if I cut you off on that. But yeah, I didn't see Elliot Anderson on this chart, so I'm going. Are we moving ourselves towards the potential of him playing in a
These
deeper
are
role, 'cause it
forwards.
seems like based off
I
of
think
this.
Anderson is a midfielder, so he doesn't come in the data.
Yeah, this is just.
Oh
forwards,
gosh, that's right.
why.
That's right. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. I mean, I've specifically had to put Gibbs White in this just to.
Yeah, that's where my head went, because it's like I have to
Yeah.
divorce myself from the fact that he's a 10, not a true midfielder. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys.
No, and I think this is actually very, very quickly. If you have a look, this is what Ange has got to decide on. And this is also where, look, data is not the be all and end all. There is an eye test to all of this, because anyone that's been watching Morgan Gibbs White, he's just been frustrated, the living daylights of him, like of what he's been doing. But where Dan Doy is, or Dan Doy rather, and when you look where Callum Hudson-Odoi is for this year's stats, does that mean that Doy starts over Hudson-Odoi if they're both pegged to be then the left-hand side, for example, just on the data? But you don't know. So this is where, you know, there needs to be the experience of having watched them as well as then what their actual data outputs are. So quickly, just going on then, a blend of what we've talked about in terms of form of the teams, but also just to go, well, what we think that they've been doing, but how have they actually been moving in games thus far? These four new that we've been, Dan and I have been focusing on. So Gyökeres, although he's a poacher, you see that he does put himself around a little bit like Chris Wood tends to do as well, even though we envisage Chris Wood being a poacher, which he is. But you'll see, you're not just going to have Gyökeres being a Gary Lineker and literally just six-yard box hugging, as it were. He is going to put himself around the pitch. You look at Madueke, and he very much hugs the lines of when he's doing it. He tries to get to the byline and affect things in that way, be it the left, be it the right of wherever he is. Eze, who's been used slightly less, but you can see there's kind of, if you look at the top, there is an element here where he does go actually up the line quite a lot, but you can see a path where he's cutting in towards the D as well. So he does offer a bit of both of those. And we know that from the experience of watching him at Palace. Now, Zubimendi is the interesting one, right? Because he is the enforcer, but you can see where he starts affecting the game. And it is actually quite high up. Now, it's not necessarily the final third, but he is dictating play absolutely everywhere. And you know the buzzword that I love, that engine room of which it's there. He is dictating everything that's happening along that huge heat map absolutely everywhere in the middle of the park. Odegaard coming back, there's a double threat. And then you've got Rice, right? And that's three in midfield. You know my feelings on three in midfield. I don't think we match up well against three in midfield. That is a real puzzler that we can come on to, Rich and Greg, when we think about building our team and maybe what Ange is going to do. Very quickly, form-wise, I've taken off of SofaScore. As Dan has cautioned, we are 3 games in, and that is not exactly rich data by any stretch of the imagination. But this is getting us your average score of the 3 games on SofaScore, right? 7 is basically acceptable. And you look, and Arsenal have got 10 players that are there. Now, noted, Saka's out, so that's 1. Mosquera's not going to start. That's 2 out. Ben White, weirdly, might be the person. He might come in for Saliba if Saliba's out and actually play centre-back. There is a large possibility that might happen. But otherwise, again, who is it? It's Saliba who might be out. And then we highlighted Timber and Calafiori down their full-back, wing-back positions. They're the ones that are really, really been on top form and causing absolute nightmares, along with Gyökeres, who's, well, he's getting towards the 7. Sadly for us, 2 players. That's it. That have got 7+, and that's Wood and Anderson, right? No one else. So very quickly, if we can just go back to one slide, because I just want to show actually Arsenal are a bit of a pinch at the moment, to my first slide, that if we go back to a white slide, that one, yeah. So with their injuries are not insignificant. Saliba might play, but again, White, who we thought might come in, he's only got a 50% chance of actually playing as well. So they might be actually through to their new starters. Saka, we know, is definitely out. Norgard, who's come in, who probably wouldn't, but he'd be first off the bench, I think, into that midfield. Maybe Mourinho, maybe him, but they both probably come on. He's 50%. Havertz and Jesus, so their 2 backup strikers are both definitely out. So out than Gyökeres, or having to put Trossard in there again, which we saw did not really work that well last season. They are very light still in that striking position if Gyökeres is not having a good game. And interestingly, because they've loaned out so many players, they've got a squad of 25 players on the nose, right? But 4 of them are under 21. Okay, so if you work this out and Saliba does not start, they don't even have a full bench. And 4 of those players are going to be under 21 players. But what they do really well, those under 21 players, that's Lewis Skelly, who potentially starts for England at left back. That's Manueri, who was exceptional at England under 21. So he is probably in a better position than McAtee, like in development level. You got Mosquera, who I've talked about, who might actually then feature as a centre-back. And then you've got Doman, who's 15 years old and being trusted at the moment for some minutes, which is absolutely crazy. So that's what a really good academy can do for you, of some of these players that are coming out. And that's what we're aiming for. But if we're going to play Arsenal, with Odegaard just coming back, Saliba potentially being out, Saka definitely out, them having nothing off the bench in their forward line, this might actually not be the worst time, I think, to play them.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, both of you, for that. Gives us a bit of an insight into Arsenal in depth. Let's take a break.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
Okay, you know what to do when it comes to the Cheese Trader. Scott asked in the comments, will Ange go straight into his attacking style, or will he temper that and assess the squad and build the style of play? So that's a question into the mix we're going to talk about in the next segment as well, Richard. As well as really, again, Scott asking the question that's on my lips and your lips, based on England performances, is Anderson now a bigger player for Forest than Morgan? I think yes, he is. But I think further to that as well, Scott and everyone else, Richard, do we now have to really think that Anderson for Forest as well as England has to play in that number 6? We know that he can play 6, 8, 10. He can play wherever he likes. He can play in goal probably. He is the complete midfielder, the complete footballer. The stats and the chat the boys have just given us have really, really kind of talked about that as well. But for Forest, you know, we don't know what Ange is going to do. So how is he going to approach this? We don't know. Richard, how would you like Ange to approach this? We're going to build a team in a minute, but we're not going to build a team that we think Ange will pick, because we got no idea. We're going to build a team that we would pick based on what we know. And what we know is who's played so far this season and who's played well and who hasn't. What we know is who's been away in international duty and who's got journey time to consider. Chris Wood, for example, coming back from down under. And we didn't have anyone go away with Brazil. They're coming back from Bolivia. We've got Murillo back in the building training. We've got Igor Jesus in the building training. Forgive me, I don't know that Calimundo was away with the under 21s for France.
Neither was Bakwa. Neither was he.
So they're both in the building. So with that information in our brains, when we try and build this team, maybe that will come into thinking, maybe it won't. But Richard, so Elliot Anderson, does he need to play 6 for Forest? Is that how you want to see him used? And has Big Ange got to suck it up and go into this game, in your opinion, and say, you know what? I'm not going to start tinkering too much. It's too early to come in with literally no day's notice, because the international players aren't back until Thursday. He's not going to have any time with them if he selects them to say, this is how I want you to play. Is it more sensible? That's the word. Is it more sensible that he says, just keep doing what you've been doing?
I mean, there's definitely a case for that. I think Dr. Anna put it in the chat as well, that she thinks there'll be kind of a phased in or a transition or a cutover, as we like to say in the business world, right? Plan as to how you manage that. And I think there's a lot of merit to potentially not tinkering and disrupting things too quickly. But again, it's all how much can he absolutely absorb within the training ground and see what he might have options. I mean, I think he's acutely aware of some of the capabilities of the players that he's got. I don't think he's, been sitting on a beach somewhere, not in, in Australia or anywhere else, Portugal, Spain, wherever, just sort of, taking down a few drinks and not really paying attention to what's going on in football. But I I could see a Douglas Luiz moment coming in to this particular match, and I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Anderson kind of shift into that 6 role, because I don't think it completely prevents him from, as we saw with Zubamendi's heat map, he can kind of vacillate and move between, sort of just over that halfway point, moving into the final third, or drift back and play, because that's what he was doing with England. And you could see he was getting involved in the attacking component of the game, even if he wasn't firmly placed in that area of the pitch at all times. So I don't think it prevents him. And Paul asked the question, I think you flashed it up just there. Would Sangare be able to do what Anderson did? And I think I'd probably answer no. Not with the same athleticism, the same quickness and ability. I mean, and his tackling, his dueling, and his engagement on a tackle is I think superior. And his positioning to win the ball back is better. He's actually pretty decent at heading the ball too, in terms of winning duels in the air. He's not too bad, at least from the optic standpoint. I haven't looked at the stats to actually look at his aerial duel win rate or anything of that nature right now. But as Dan said, limited, he's good. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. He's just, as you said, Dan, he's a complete player. So I wouldn't be opposed to seeing that, because I think what you're doing then is you're giving Luis an opportunity. I think Raf touched on this, to get in his natural role of that 8. Right, you let Morgan play in that 6, and I think there could be some synergy in a 10. You can start to build that synergy. I would be interested to see Backwell get inserted in this, because I just want to see what it looks like. Because I mean, all of that you see on the film is that he's just very dynamic and very quick, and I think he just adds a finishing component, he adds an assist component. I mean, it's just the dynamism that can possibly get generated from having some of these young players get inserted. See what that does is really intriguing. But at the same time, to your point, Greg, do you want to just start throwing in new tools and hope that they function in a cohesive way? Probably not. So it might be some slight gestures of change, but not enough. But I do want to see what it looks like with Anderson 6 on our team, because it worked and with England. But again, we're talking about a completely different group of personnel and different coaching and so forth. But it looks like it would work.
Goes back to the timing of the Ange appointment and the Nuno sacking. Because, and this is where it's become a bit of a head scratcher, because we lose against West Ham. It would have been the easiest thing in the world for the next day them to sack him and say, you know what, we're moving in a different direction, and bring Ange in for the fucking international break to work with at least with half the squad or thereabouts, and get them kind of on to his way of thinking. He hasn't had time to do any of that. They've been working with Nuno, those that are at home. And so, therefore, that almost feels like a complete waste of time. There's also the Europa squad question that we were talking about, is who picked that squad and who's the whys, the wheres, and the whens. And if Nuno had a hand in picking it, and then they sack him after, that again is just a complete brain frazzler for me. But hey, we are where we are. Ange is now in the building. And so, we are Forest fans, yes, but we are football fans. And like any other football fan, we want to try and be positive about our club. And if we want to term us happy clappers, whoever it is out there that uses that phrase, then go ahead, because I don't really give a fuck, to be honest with you. I'm going to say how I see it, which is I wasn't in love with the idea of Ange Postecoglou, but now he's the manager. I'm looking for positives as much as I can see them. So when I see comments like this from Steve, who I'm assuming is not a Forest fan, but he's well within his rights to say this, and fair enough, I'll read it out. I love how Forest fans are trying to square the circle with Ange after abundant evidence he's a car crash waiting to happen. Well, is he? I don't know. Maybe you can say that he is. I don't know that he is. I know that he won a trophy last season, and people will say, well, yeah, it was a crap final, it was an easy thing, and Bodo glimpse and all the rest of it. He still won a Europa League final. And can he marry the two together? And to Raf's point earlier about potentially him being a one-season wonder, where he's going to get a chance this season to go into the Europa League again and be in the Premier League. Now, if he can't get anything higher than 17th, 16th or 15th, let's say, then it's clear to me and to everybody that Ange can't do two things at the same time. And that's, of course, us going deep and potentially winning the Europa. So it could well be that Raf's right. He's a one-season wonder, brought in to win the trophy. But we as Forest fans and as football fans have to get on board with the fact that he is the new manager and try and seek the positives where it may be. It might not be our first choice, but so many people were saying when Nuno came in, that's a grim appointment. I'm not happy with that. I mean, I know how that turns out. So it's a fresh start. It's a clean slate. He's taking this game on Saturday and he's taking us forward. So Elliot Anderson in the 6 for me is an absolute no-brainer. it's going to be good for Forest to have that position tied down. I don't think Sangare can do what Elliot Anderson can do, and that's not me writing Sangare off. He's in the squad and he'll get game time. Let's build a squad, or a team rather, for this weekend. I'll get my screen worked out. I've got to try and share it. Let's find it. There we go. Right. So together, we're going to build this and come up with what we think might be the best way forwards. Dan, I'll come to you first.
Agree on formation.
I don't think we're going to go in formation either, but we're going to go around. We're going to have a chat. I'm going to wiggle it around. You guys are going to give me what you personally would do. And then it won't necessarily be something that we all agree on, but what would you personally do, Danscape, on Saturday? The team that's on there is the one that started against West Ham, with Dan Indu on the right-hand side and Callum Hudson-Odoi on the left, Anderson Sangare in the midfield, the back line that we know about, Gibbs White in the 10, Wood up top. Would you keep it the same? Would you mix it around? What would Danscape do? You're the gaffer.
Am I? Wow. I have to get an Australian accent.
It's your birthday. You've been elevated.
Bloody hell. Right. I think I would stay the same. Let's face it. Why would you change something that's so far worked quite well apart from the West Ham game, especially going away? But I think what you'll find is that Gibbs White drops into quite a deep role. He's tasked to do his deeper role that he has done against the likes of Man City and people like that. But I think for me, it wouldn't surprise me to see Douglas Luiz. But I think in a game like this, when we talk about Anderson in the 6 and all this, Anderson isn't just a 6. Anderson, whenever you put him in the team, will play as an 8. He will do both. But there are games where you need just a 6. And for me, you don't put Anderson in that role because it's a waste. So you put Sangare in that role. And that, for me, is this kind of game. Because Arsenal are going to dominate a lot of the ball, I still think. I don't think you could possibly coach us, within 3 or 4 days. And a lot of these players being on international duty and things. I suppose maybe you could argue that Chris Wood doesn't start this one for the sake of international travel and kind of not being involved in training.
Who do you start in his place? Who you putting in then? Come on, I want some names as to who you're going to put in.
Yeah, I get there. Igor Jesus,
okay,
I
so
think.
Igor Jesus going in.
I would say.
Ola Aina's injured. Ola Aina's injured. So Aina's out by the looks of things, I reckon.
Yeah, fair enough. So if Aina's out, then what's our choice in our transfer business for fullbacks?
Well, we don't know. I assume that Zinchenko is not allowed to play.
Yeah, he won't be released.
He's not. That's
he can't.
I don't think
loan.
So it's Savona.
Can't.
So our only choice is Savona, which I'm sure was probably one of Nuno's concerns about why we needed more fullbacks and possibly earlier.
So does that then maybe make it a back
in the Wildin
back 3? Do you go to back 3 then?
Then who's your right wing back? Bakwa. I mean, that would be
Bakwa.
That would be a bold move to go to Arsenal away with him as a right wing back.
And he does a 4-3-3 typically, right? Does he ever do a back 3?
Well, when I looked at his formations, he tends to start as a 4-2-3-1 at teams and then evolve into like a 4-3-3. It's how I noticed the formations over time tend to go. So, but for me, it looks like that. Sangare is in the middle.
We have
Ndoye and Hudson.
We have Savona out. So we have Savona out till late September, according to Patch Adams in the comments. I don't know anything about that.
I don't know about that because FPL is very, very up on player injuries. They're a couple of days late, but Savona he's apparently been injured for a while. He's come back from injury and he's not listed as injured on FPL. So I don't think he's injured.
I don't know what. Obviously, then you're probably looking at Xhaka, couldn't you? Aren't you? Potentially as you right back if it's not Savona, who, like we said in that fullback special, doesn't necessarily, not necessarily a worse option than Savona in some respects because he is quite good on the ball and a good ball carrier. I think it looks like that. I think Sangare is in the middle, Gibbs White's on the right, Anderson's on the left of that midfield setup. But that's effectively how you end up trying to cover the midfield, but still have a bit of a threat. But all I can go on is what we used to do. I've got no idea. Ange might come in and completely switch it up. Yeah, but if I'm in charge, I think you're going to Arsenal away. Yeah, you're going to Arsenal away, so you start by being solid, and then
it says on Savona that he should be back for the Arsenal match. Is the latest news on his injury?
But he did come in injured, and as James Cunningham says, he's been out for 3 months. So is it wise to throw him in at Arsenal? Brucey said he came in injured, listed as doubtful. So, all right. So, Dan, you're saying a 4-3-3 potentially. So Cunha as your right back, and Gibbs White drops into midfield. Igor Jesus takes Wood's place. Raf, what are you doing differently? And this is your team.
I love
Ange's team,
4-3-3.
it's your team.
This has got 4-3-3 written all over it. If we're playing a three midfield, we play three ourselves. Otherwise, we just get mullered every single time. So I'm going to change this, and I'm dropping two of those midfielders. I'm done with Gibbs White at the moment. I don't trust him for this game. He is not. He's been terrible for the last two games. He was terrible in the run-in as well last season. Douglas Luiz comes in, and do you know what? Rogue shout. I'm going to put Anderson in the 6, and I know I don't like him being in the 6, but it limits it. But I'm going to put in Yatesy. I want Yates to rub up that midfield like a wrong massively. He's done it to Odegaard beforehand, right? He has done that to Odegaard beforehand. Same two players. So I just want this. I want the S-Housery to be through the roof in this midfield, like you've never seen, to disrupt that midfield. And Yates, when he's not a 6, he can't do the 6 role. So Anderson needs to be that 6. And that affords Douglas Luiz to be able to do that. And also, except for Anderson, those two have been back and training with Ange all week as well. Morgan Gibbs-White has not been. Sangare has not been. So that's why that's my midfield 3. I've had Callum Wendo up the top. Ange likes mobility. So Callum Wendo up the top. Now, this is the cruncher. I would go, as much as Dan Doy is on absolutely scintillating form, he has not been back with Ange. So I'd have Backward down the right. I would have Callum Hudson-Odoi on the left. I would have Hutch coming off the bench and trusted to build his confidence back in after his snub. And I think, do you know what? There's a part of me which would play Abbott at right back. He managed to do it against Man City in the Cup. But I do think that I would play Savona. I think he will be fit. And also, I don't know what the hate on Savona is. He played a load of games for Juve. He comes from an Italian setup that knows how to defend. Italians are born in their DNA how to defend. And on FPL, he's more valuable than Morato. And when it comes to full centre-backs and more, M&M are 5.5, Nico and Aina are 5 million. So centre-backs are generally more valuable, but he, as a fullback, is more valuable than Morato. So I'm putting my trust in Savona. There's a reason why we bought him. He comes from good stock and good experience. He plays for me if he's fit. Otherwise, I'd actually give Abbott a punt with Louise covering him on that side. That's me.
Okay, thank you. So Raf's going for Yates and Louise coming in to join Anderson in midfield. Callum Window leading the attack in through the middle, that is. Backward on the right. We're still keeping Savona down on the right-hand side at right back with Ola potentially injured. Okay, Richard Spray, I'm coming to you. And whilst I do that, you mentioned Dan Ndoye earlier, and I thought Dan Ndoye had a really good international break. He's assisted, he scored, and we were talking about gate crashing the box. And the goal he scored for Switzerland was him coming in and gate crashing the box and getting on the end of a cross. So for me, you know, I like what I saw from him for Switzerland, and he's playing on the left-hand side as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Comfortable on that left-hand side. So that I'm kind of throwing that into the mix before you get started to say that's kind of where I'm thinking. So over to you.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I almost would like to have a little bit of savvy, a little bit of, experience off the bench and put Ndoye on the left, because it does intrigue me. I mean, I'm probably going against what I just said a few minutes ago, which was like I wouldn't tinker too much and make a lot of wholesale changes. But I think just based off of players coming back from the international break, people who've actually players who've actually been there to train and so forth. I know it's limited time with Ange being able to kind of imprint anything at this stage, but I think what you've got a nice balance of real attacking, progressive play with Ndoye on the left, Backwell on the right. And then you've got that Anderson element. I know he played a lot of football for England. He's trained a bunch. And so he played I think he played both matches, the entire match, right? If I'm not mistaken, I don't think he actually. So that would be my only concern is like, as much as I'd like to see him in his 6, would you potentially play Morgan simply because, and Yates sort of play a pseudo 6 role? Because I do like the idea, because when you think about Sangare in the middle, I can't disagree with it, Dan, typically says about how he would leverage Sangare, and he'd have to play really deep in my mind to get the right angles in this kind of midfield, because they've got an athletic midfield. And I worry about, players like Odegaard running roughshod through that midfield, because he is tricky and difficult to deal with. And Yates is a perfect, he plays the psychological warfare really well. And I think to Raf's point about killing the engine, right? There's really 2 or 3 engines that they have, but being able to kind of at least eliminate or, mitigate one of them would be of value. So I do like this setup. I think it's really interesting. And this will be interesting to see how Ange views Yates in terms of how he wants to leverage him. Because we know, Nuno didn't favor him for a start most of the time, but he did favor his presence and his impact from a leadership standpoint. But he can come on and give you some really good consistent play. So I really like this team. I think it's got a good balance of attack and good defending, good S-housery, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Again, these are teams that we are coming up with chat. So one or two of you might ridicule it, and that's fine. You've got your own ideas about what team you would play. The thing is, we've got options. We've got so many options now. And one thing that Dan was able to do when we looked at the squad was look at for the Europa competition, that is, was look at how many different players can cover different positions and play in different areas. And so it'd be interesting to see how Ange employs everyone. Obviously, you want people playing in their set positions. But if I'm honest with you guys, I'm going to look at something different. I'm actually thinking that we might do something like a 5 at the back. Okay. So I'm going to set up like a 5-3-1. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm looking for defensive solidity. Now, I know that this is my team. So therefore, Ange won't do this. I know that. He likes his high line that he might make his way to at some point. Hopefully not for Saturday. But this, excuse me. This is my team. So I am putting Bakwa there because I'm going to have him as my wing back. Okay, Bakwa goes in on the right-hand side. In my centre-back pairing, I've got Morato coming in, of course. I've got Nico Williams playing on the left. So a back line of Williams, Morato, Murillo, Milenkovic, and Bakwa. So I'm looking for attacking flair from Williams and from Bakwa. I'm keeping 3 in that midfield. And so I'm keeping Douglas Luiz in because I think that I want him there. I want Elliot Anderson in there as well. You know what? I'm actually going to keep Yates there as well because I'm with you, Raf. Disruptor. He wears his heart on his sleeve. So I'm happy to keep Yates there. If it was Sangare, I'd be probably equally as happy, And then we got our front 2 to think of. I'm looking at giving James McAtee a first start in a Forest shirt, and he's going to be behind Cali Mwendo. So Chris Wood, for me, has got too far to come back. We've got a squad. Let's give him a break. When we don't have options, you want to put him in. We've got options. Let's let him recover. Morgan Gibbs-White, last time out in the Forest shirt, had an absolute stinker. I'm with you as well, Raf, that he hasn't been playing well. I want him to feel the heat. I want him to feel the pressure from James McAtee and others and say, look, actually, you guys, my place isn't guaranteed. That's what I'm trying to say. It's time for Douglas Luiz to get a start in the Premier League. So that's how I would set up. I'd go to Arsenal looking to keep it as solid and as tight as possible, because they are a very, very good team and they can hurt us. I want us to get involved in the midfield and break down their engine room and match them up as much as possible. But I still want to be able to catch them on the attack. So Williams and Bakwa moving forwards, like I said, giving us some width. McAtee linking the play up. Asking a lot from Cali Mwendo. But, I'm kind of almost setting up, if I'm honest with you, for a point. I'm setting up to try and get a 1-1 or a 0-0. Maybe that's too negative. But hey, I'm not a football manager. But in this game, I'm the manager and this is my team and that's how I see it. So I would try and set up for a point, because if we try and go too hard at Arsenal, then we will come unstuck, I believe. All right. Okay. I want to say thank you very much for the $10 donation from Inakoma, who says, Ange fan, but let's be honest, other than Ange winning the Europa League, what other Spurs manager in the past has really done anything? And the ones that have left have all gone and won things. So believe. I think what he's trying to say is, look, people that leave Spurs go on and win things. And this is going to be another case of exactly that. Thank you so much for the $10 to go into the pot. Lots of you in the comments are getting involved as well. And Zach Abbott from Brucey got a mention. I think, he's definitely a right back option if we want to go with a flat back four. So we've given you our teams, what we think might be a setup you could go with. Richard, get your crystal ball out. Get your crystal balls out now. Give it a rub. Give it a nice rub. What's Ange going to do on Saturday? You're putting yourself into his brain now. He's come into the club. Based on what you know and what you've seen, he's a smart guy. He backs himself. That's what I keep saying. He backs himself time and time again. What's he going to do? How is he going to play this one?
I think there's credence to the idea that I don't think he's going to do like I have a boss right now who makes a lot of decisions that are the opposite of the previous guy that was in the chair, simply because that guy he didn't like. Not that he didn't like Nuno, of course, Ange, but the idea is that Luis has always been a sticking point, right? That's always been part of the equation. So I imagine he will bring him in, but I don't think it's going to be as many wholesale changes as like I mentioned, but I do think he's going to favor his 4-3-3. I think he's going to try to do something to kind of, as I said, try to create a little bit of difficulty for them to work around us or through us. But I don't think he's going to completely deny his usual setup, his usual approach to things. But I could see him definitely keeping Anderson in the squad, even with the amount of minutes he played. Because when you look at the kind of player he is, that's the guy that you want on the pitch. That's I think shifting gears towards being the linchpin of this squad. And so he's got leadership capability on the pitch. He's vocal on the pitch. He tries to get everybody in the right position. I just think, and that's just the intangibles component, let alone the kind of talent that he possesses. So I think he's going to go with the 4-3-3, but I don't think he's going to change too much, because you do kind of look at having a Callum Hudson-Odoi, a guy you can trust, a guy that you know what you're going to get out of him every week. Maybe, he kind of retains a lot of that personnel, but moves to more of his formational preference. And I could definitely agree with Dan. I could see Gibbs White being utilized in a different way, because maybe he just needs an opportunity to kind of take a step back from being the sole element of attack. It seems the thing that drives that, the true engine, I think, is shifting, like I mentioned, to Anderson. So he may not play a 10 role to do that, but I think he could see Gibbs White dropping in a deeper. And we've long said that he can survey the field a bit in a different way from that position. He can he's got the work rate to play it, I think. And it might give him an opportunity to take a step back and say, you know what, I don't have to be the guy in every match, right? Because he does tend to overcompensate when he's not playing well. So I definitely think there's not going to be a ton of tinkering. It's going to be a phased in sort of scenario for him to get enough time to see how these new pieces can actually, function in his style of play.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Ulrika Johnson's back. I had a big crush on you, Ulrika, growing up, I have to say, and that crush is coming back, because there's another $2.99 in the pot from Ulrika. I think that's two in one episode. She says Nuno counterattack, Ange front foot, disaster. Okay, well, we will have to wait and see. Dan, when you were looking through your stats, and maybe you do or don't know this, but I'm interested, and maybe Raf will have an idea as well, on Ange's record against Arsenal and how he's gone about these games when he was at Spurs, and what the outcome was. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I don't think it was particularly anything that stands out in terms of any victories for Spurs. And certainly last season, there was 4 games to pick from. So I'm interested to know if he's got any kind of record against Arsenal.
I think yesterday, was it one? I said one draw and 3 defeats, I think.
Was it?
From 4 games. I don't know if that's just league
Correct.
games. I don't know if they played any cup games. Whatever.
And we haven't beaten them in 30 years, 35 years, 36 years, I think, away.
And does Ange's pride get in the way of him being able to approach this in any other way than what he's used to, Dan?
Well, my question to you guys is, how much of a free hit is this game? Like what do we call a disaster versus just, oh, well, fair enough, it's a new manager. So if we lose 3-0, it's kind of expected because it's a tough game and you've got a new manager and you've got turmoil. But if we lose 5-0, is that, what the hell are you doing? Why are you doing that, mate? What's the barometer for this game? And this is why it's really interesting, because he's come in and taken this game when he didn't necessarily need to. But what's the barometer? What's he aiming for? What can he kind of
not a heavy defeat. A draw would be great. A victory would be obviously what a victory.
The only
would
way
be.
for me that you avoid a heavy defeat is to is to obviously not play his way from day one when you've not had time to train for it. And, particularly when it comes to the playing out from the back and all that, which takes a hell of a lot of, practice, I assume.
Have we got the players for his style? Interrupting you again, because one thing that came out yesterday with all the media outlets is, I don't know why. Ali McCoy, who I love on TalkSport, was big, and I wanted to phone in and have a chat with him. And I don't know why they've hired Ange, because he's completely opposite to how Nuno plays, and his style doesn't fit with the players at Forest. And I'm kind of thinking, well, actually, we just bought 13 new players that actually I think will fit that style. Am I wrong about that? Do you think I'm off with that, or do you think the ones we brought in? I'm very, very capable in terms of playing the way that Ange wants, or is it really the defensive line we're talking about in terms of playing the way that Ange wants?
Yeah, I think the defensive line is the big question mark in terms of pushing those players up. Just because, again, that is the exact opposite of what we've had to do for the last sort of season and a bit. It's been sit back, don't engage teams, and then you're going to go towards pressing, which we have been doing more of so far this season, but against teams that we sort of should be doing that against. The difference is we're coming up to an Arsenal side where in the past we would have gone there and tried to frustrate them and nick something on the break. So the rest of the team in midfield, look, I think we've pretty much got the same central midfield apart from Douglas Luiz coming in. I don't know whether Douglas Luiz is an Ange player. I think from what I remember of an Ange team, they have to do a lot of turning around and running backwards because, everybody bombs forward and then the ball ends up behind you and you have to bomb backwards. So you need a lot of energy. You need a lot of box-to-box ability to play in that midfield. So Anderson is bang on. I don't know whether Luiz is that style of player, to be honest, in terms of, fitness and all that. Sangari clearly isn't. Sangari's going to sit back and do a job there, which might work. Look, there's no way he plays exactly the same, but he's going to want to progress it to more of a front foot style, and I think that's how he sees it. But what's interesting is he's a different manager to any other Marinakis manager, because it's always been widely sort of reported and known that he prefers quite a conservative manager. If you look at Chris Hughton, Lamucci, Nuno, Cooper, they're all defence first, steady, clean sheets, nick a goal. Even at Olympiacos, I think that's been the trend. Whereas now with Ange, this is a diversion from that. He is very much the opposite. So like I say, my question is, how much of a free hit is this game? Can we afford to have a bit of a just suck it and see, or do we need to just
go on, Raf? You can answer that. How much of a free hit is this game, do you think?
I think it's perfect, and that's why Ange came in. I don't think it was ballsy or anything. I just think that it's excusable if he doesn't win it, and it gives him
a lot of managers that wouldn't have taken it. That's why I said that. There's a lot of managers that would have said, I'll take the job, but I don't want to go to Arsenal as my first game.
Yeah, I think he's smart cookie. He took it because he goes, it's no great shakes if I lose it, and it gives me longer with the squad if I come in before the game than I would have done anyway. And maybe I can try some stuff out. It's not the end of the works. It's my first game, and it just doesn't stick to me. And then I've got 2 games to fix it afterwards. So to that degree, you might see a little bit. Yeah, don't know. I don't really know. This is one of those games where we haven't got a great track record there. And at the end of the day, we'd be delighted with a point in any scenario, even if Nuno was here. So I think from that degree, every game is winnable. This is not likely to be anything other than a loss.
And that's why my friend Sergio said that Raf has been speaking a lot of sense when you talk about Arsenal, because you lunatics, I think you might get something, and Raf is the realist that says you're going to get stuffed. So there we go. So Sergio's quite happy with you, Raf, because you think we're going to get stuffed. Anyway, there we go. That's us done and dusted. We are way, way, way over, but we are going to quickly go round, starting with Richard Spray. I want your score predictions. Ange's first game. We don't know how it's going to turn out, but give us that score prediction, Richard Spray.
Yeah, I'm probably completely off base, and I'm just, like I always say, I'm just sucking on the hopium here and trying to think that there's something we can get something out of this, because it's been a long time since we've beaten them away. I don't know. Something just tells me it goes 1-1, and then some miracle happens and we end up with a 2-1 win. So I'm gonna go 2-1 Forest. I'm gonna go full optimist on this one.
2-1 Forest, Richard Spray. There we go. Danscape.
I think there's so many things that go against us. International break, new manager, not quite sure what we're doing. Players all confused. Players not necessarily knowing what's going on, blah, blah, blah. It would be an amazing win. It would be a pure new manager bounce kind of win. Nothing more than that. So Unfortunately, though, I think we lose it. We probably lose it like 2-0, unfortunately, for me.
Okay.
And just to address Paul Morley's comment in the chat there about Douglas Luiz, not my style of player. That's not true. I'd like that style of player. My issue with Douglas Luiz is that the hype is up here and the numbers are down here. And that's all. That's my only issue with Douglas Luiz, is whether he can actually deliver the hype that's been brought in around him.
We have to know. Remember, Danscape is governed and guided by the numbers with Spreadsheet Central, and the eye test doesn't come into play. Thank you very much. 2-0 in your mind, possibly for Arsenal to beat Forest on Saturday. Raf, score prediction, please.
We lose by 1 goal. Ange's lost by 1 goal 4 times. Well, every time he's lost, it's by 1 goal. So, and it's Ange. So it's either we lose 4-3 or 3-2. So I'm going to go 3-2 loss. Goalfest, 3-2 loss.
Okay. On our score predictions for the podcast league, I've got this down as an Arsenal win, and I'm not going to change that. I think I'm not going to change that. But I am ever the optimist. And I do think there's a new manager bounce comes into play. And I think after the week we've had and everything coming together, the footballing gods and the way that the world works, I just think we're going to get a nice surprise on Saturday. And I think it's going to be 1-0 to the Forest. Not 1-0 to the Arsenal. It's going to be 1-0 to the Forest. Sergio says 3-1 to Arsenal. I mentioned that earlier. So that's his score prediction again. And you've been getting your scores in, I think, in the chat. Brucey also says 2-0 to Arsenal. It's going to be tough, guys. But we have to go there with high hopes that, it's the start of a new era, start of a new beginning. Okay, Danscape, Raf, thank you very much indeed for everything today. Really appreciate your input. As ever, Richard, final word from you.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say other than I'm
I know.
I'm keeping my firm belief that Marinakis will put us in a good position, I think, and I've switched gears a little bit. I was a little bit pessimistic about the Ange situation when it was all being rumored at one point, even weeks ago when this all started with Nuno. But I'm a firm believer that I think he'll come in and has learned from his second half of the season or season from last season with Tottenham and provide a good option for us and really galvanize his team and be a lot better of a manager than we anticipate. So always the optimist, trying to be the optimist anyway, not trying to, get too away from, not be a happy clapper, but at least be somewhat positive.
Indeed. And we want to be positive. It's our football team. It's no point being a fan of your club if you can't try and be positive about them. I'm not going to walk around my head up my backside thinking, oh my God, we're going to lose every week. If that starts to materialize, then, we'll be talking about that as much as we talk about the victories and all the good stuff. So here's to a new era under Ange Postecoglou. He is the Nottingham Forest manager. I call on all Forest fans, whether you like the appointment or not, to put that to one side and to get behind the new man and his team in charge. He's got the best squad Forest have assembled ever, potentially, at his disposal. But it's the Premier League, and it's tough. And we are still finding our feet on season 4, back up from 23 years in the wilderness. We have the Europa League just around the corner to get our teeth stuck into, and he won that competition last season. There's lots of good times ahead, guys. You can bet your bottom dollar on it. See you soon.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Dark and Red.